VikesNow, Dustin Baker, the end of week edition, August 26th. We're going to talk about the reasons why you should watch the Denver Broncos, Minnesota Vikings final preseason game of the year. This usual disclaimer about preseason, the Vikings could win 47-0 or the Vikings could lose 47-0. Nobody cares about the impact of the win or losses. However, there are roster bubble items that are awaiting solution. And that, in itself, is why you should tune into the game. And then, before I forget, the last time I was on solo, I don't know why, but my audio cut out towards the end. So, with my amateur ass, I apologize. I'll try not to let that happen again, although I don't know what it was to begin with. It wasn't fair to you guys. I digress. Let's get into the reasons that you should get invested in the Vikings final preseason game. What this essentially is a continuation of what Josh Fry talked about with his do-or-die things. These are make-or-break things to watch inside the game in Colorado on Saturday night. I got about, 6 of them in no order of importance. I shall reveal them now. The first one is the center conundrum. It's up to you to decide if this is indeed a conundrum. Garrett Bradbury goes into year 4, hoping to have this career renaissance with a new coaching staff. I guess he bulked up by whatever amount of pounds. And the only reason that he's getting this final trial is because of his draft stock. Drafted, 18th or 19th overall in 2019. In theory, he should have locked down the Vikings offensive line in the middle of it, the guts, for a decade. He has not done that. He has done the antithesis of that and made us all groan when it comes to pass protection. In fairness to Bradbury, my usual disclaimer, he is an adept run blocker, so, give him a cookie. But the center part of the preseason game pertains to Austin Schlottmann. He looked like Dermontti Dawson against the 49ers, but that was against backups and that was preseason, so again, nobody cares. However, if he does that again, Schlottmann that is, against his former team, the Broncos, has a 92.8 PFF score, I believe it was, then he could be the next man up if Bradbury has his tumultuous showings early on in the regular season. Otherwise, Chris Reed's a little banged up, but I've kind of forecast that he's also a contingency plan at center because they've used him in training camp, the second team center. But in terms of things to watch, this would be Austin Schlottmann if he follows up his second preseason game, the final one, with another dazzling output. Well, maybe this dude just took a few years to catch on and he actually is a decent center. So watch Schlottmann's performance to figure out if he is a viable contingency plan for Mr. Garrett Bradbury. The second one is very interesting to me. I don't know if I've ever really said this out loud. I'm a real defense guy when it comes to football. I feel like I'm out of the mainstream now because everybody wants offense and fantasy football, hurrah, PPR. That's great. I love it. I play all kinds of fantasy football. However, at my core, I love defense. Same thing goes with my basketball fandom. And accordingly, the young defensive lineman. So here's the problem for Jalen Twyman and, I never get this name right, Asazi from the Gophers. T.Y. McGill has suddenly been uncuttable. He's looked fabulous. You can't cut the guy. I know he's going to be 30 and it's taken a long time for him to blossom. That's fine. If it took that long, we'll take it. He's not going to start anyhow, we don't think, unless Armin Watts gets jettisoned. But the Vikings need a young defensive lineman to emerge in this game to get a roster spot. There has been separate but various amounts of hype for Twyman, for Asazi, and for, Luigi Villain. I've been pronouncing it wrong the whole time. Luigi Villain on the edge. The other two dudes are interior guys. But, so, you'll pull up an article that says Twyman's going to be a starter per ESPN's depth chart, which actually still says it. Or Villain, he's got a cool name. He's going to be this undiscovered stud that nobody wanted in the draft. All of those dudes are fighting for roster spots. So you should watch this preseason game to see if Twyman, Asazi, or Luigi stand out. Because otherwise, practice squad, roster cuts, that's where they're headed. And that's all thanks to, none of them really have stood out like madmen during the training camp or preseason. But T.Y. McGill has, no part of nobody's 53-man projection a month ago. Now he's on everybody. So kudos to McGill. The young defensive linemen, especially the interior ones, one of them or all of them need a good showing in order to make the 53-man roster, which will be announced on Tuesday. Number 3, the reason you should watch the Vikings preseason game is for Jalen Nailor. Or you could expand this talker to the young wide receivers. It seems self-evident that Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne, Amir Smith-Marset, and arguably B.C. Johnson are the 5. B.C. Johnson, I didn't have him on a 53-man, but it seems like they value him more than I did, which makes sense because I don't work there. But of all of these young wide receivers, Jalen Nailor, Myron Mitchell, Tristan Jackson, not all of them are going to make the team. And so for Jalen Nailor, this front office is invested in him. And in theory, if he was cut, he'd have to go through waivers just to get back on the practice squad. And I'm not sure they're willing to do that to give up on one of their own. They probably, in the grand scheme of things, don't give a shit about Myron Mitchell or Tristan Jackson. I could be wrong, but because they found Nailor themselves, and there was a lot of pre-training camp hype about what Nailor could become. You'll recall that Paul Allen implied that Nailor could be the WR3. I don't know what his timetable was, but sure as shit isn't now. But watch for Jalen Nailor. Does he move the needle to make the roster? The Vikings could keep 6 or 7 wide receivers. 7 would be a stretch. Some folks forecast that. But Mitchell, Nailor, or Jackson probably need to do something in this game to grab the job by the esophagus and say, hey, I'm the WR6. And I also say Nailor because he has that punt return toolkit on his resume, whereas Jackson and Mitchell, bless their hearts, might be able to do punt returns, but has anybody actually seen them do that? Nah. All right, moving right along. Kellen Mond, suddenly, this could be his last dance, his last hurrah. The Vikings traded for Nick Mullins. We did a show about it on Monday, I believe, and Mullins will be the QB2. You saw when we had Luke Braun on yesterday that his little litmus test is, who would you rather have for 2024? And, that's a no-brainer in terms of what you know now would be Nick Mullins because the guy's a fabulous QB2. You might take the upside of Mond, but the upside of Mond has careened to the basement over the last week and a half, or I guess just week, because he didn't look good against the 49ers. Suddenly, Mond is in a make-or-break couple of days to even make the Vikings roster. The guy that I anointed the QB2 after he outperformed Mannion against the Raiders in the first preseason game could be on the ash heap of Vikings history within a matter of days. So think about the mini rise and fall of Kellen Mond, who was drafted by the previous regime, and unlike Nailor, who I mentioned a few minutes ago, has no loyalty, the Vikings front office has no vested ties into Mond other than saying very positive things about him since about February. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the script was flipped, and Mond could be a roster cut. And a lot of prominent Vikings voices already think that's a foregone conclusion. Mond ain't it. They're keeping Mullins, and Mond will have to go through waivers in order to get to the practice squad. But this is a very sudden change of pace because Mond was supposed to be the QB2, 8 days ago. And now that's all changed. And life comes at you fast type of shit there. Second to last is I want to talk about this punter stuff. I could have had a standalone show about the punters, but we had guests on VikesNow this week. In a not shocking, but surprising turn of events, for now, Minnesota has opted to go with Ryan Wright over Jordan Berry. Jordan Berry last year was a middle-of-the-road, leaning toward pretty decent punter, and because he wasn't shitty, we're like, oh, we'll take it. And now I think the new philosophy with Ryan Wright, at least for the next couple of days, is, all right, we're going to see what this guy's got, and we don't want Jordan Berry anymore. However, I wrote about this on VikingsTerritory.com this morning. Just because Berry was cut doesn't mean he can't come back. Now, he may find his way to the Bills after their shenanigans, legal turmoil that's beset the punt god, so he could be signed by somebody else. But I'm here to tell you that Ryan Wright, being the punter right now, If he goes out and has a dud like Kellen Mond did at quarterback against the 49ers, they can call Barry right back. Say, hey, this was our cerebral experiment. We wanted Ryan Wright to do this all by himself against the Broncos. And look, the dude only averaged 33 yards per punt or some bullshit like that. They would hop right back to Barry, in my opinion. Hell, Ty Smith, the cornerback, was released during the first wave of roster cuts, signed him back yesterday. He was gone for 9 days. That same shit can happen to Barry. So right now it feels like the punter battle has been decided. They cut somebody, they're moving on. But in reality, this could be an audition for Wright to play in a regular season simulation, not looking over his shoulder at anybody else, and let's see how he does. If he flounders, he can get cut, and they can bring Barry right back because they already know what they have in Barry, which is a pretty decent punter. So watch the punting. I know that doesn't move the needle too much. Why do I want to watch a bunch of punts? Well, it's field position. It matters. So the takeaway there is if Ryan Wright looks bogus, they can go right back to Barry. There's no rule stipulating that he's gone forever. And finally, rounding out the show before the final preseason game is Nick Mullins himself. They were kind of coy about whether or not he'll play, if he'll be ready in time. I think we know that starters won't play, and that's fine. Nobody's going to get hurt. But on Mullins, the surprising trade that showed up earlier this week, we don't know if we'll get to see him. However, if we do, he can make you exhale at this QB2 position, because let's face it, the QB2 for the Vikings has not been something that gives you comfort or security since Case Keenum. 2018, it was Trevor Siemian. He didn't play. Cousins never gets hurt. I guess he could have been decent. Nobody knows. Nobody cares. After that, it's been the Sean Mannion experience, and almost anybody I've ever met in my life that wears purple clothes and likes the Vikings doesn't care for him. Now, there's a small chance on Saturday night you'll get to see some of Mullins, which is what the rest of the world usually does at QB2. They find a guy who gives you a puncher's chance to win, and for 3 seasons with Sean Mannion, we've stared at each other and been like, oh, great, Cousins got COVID, or the resting starters, we have to watch Mannion. If your mentality is we have to watch this guy, then he's probably not a very good QB2. Conversely, you should be a little pumped about watching Mullins because, it's a quarterback trade and everybody, loves the QB2. But Mullins is actually pretty good. Not only did the Vikings upgrade at QB2, they probably got a top 8 QB2 in the world for the job. Again, it shows you that they're in it to win it this season, despite what you might think or your resentments about not rebuilding. Mullins is here to give the team a chance to win in the event Cousins gets hurt. So the splashy takeaway with the preseason game is, do we actually get to see him? How does he look? And I'm sure we'll talk about it next week. So that is VikesNow. I hope you enjoyed this week. We had Josh Fry, Luke Braun, McKinney was on there on that same show. And we're getting close. We are not far away, a little over 2 weeks from the regular season when all of the rubber hits the road because, damn it, it's the Packers coming for baptism by fire for Kevin O'Connell in his first damn game. That's all I got, and Skol, baby.